Is Ascent going to become completely unplayable? Well, maybe, because there's been a bit of a meta trend so far in 2025 on Ascent that is taking it to some pretty extreme directions. Now, this actually did start in 2024, when we started to see some teams on Ascent pick up double Sentinel comps playing Deadlock. But that has continued into 2025 now, and we are now seeing some pretty extreme results on Ascent, where teams are absolutely dominating on the defensive sides. Teams like Cloud9 and Team Liquid are winning 11 and 12 rounds on their defensive sides, and making it seem like it's actually impossible to attack on this already defense-sided map into a double Sentinel comp. And so what we're going to do today is take a look at that double Sentinel comp, see how, it does overall statistically, how it's doing so far, some of the things that it does in terms of the way it plays, and take a look at the attack side as well, which also has some interesting things going on. So what I've done is created a little slide here of all of the agents that have been played in a double Sentinel comp so far, and the teams that have played it across the 4 tier 1 regions. So you can see that most of the teams here, of the 8 teams we're going to take a look at, picked Omen, but Talon picked Astra. Everyone played Deadlock. Deadlock is very essential to this comp overall. Most teams went with Yoru, but some did go with Jet. There's a bit of a split between whether you want to play Cypher or Vice, and there's a bit of a split depending on whether you want to play Sova or Teo. So, with that in mind, let's think about this comp and what this comp does. And of course, I shouldn't really need to explain to you that defensive side is going to be pretty good in this comp in general, right? And it's going to be hard to attack into. But what's interesting about this comp is that only one team out of the 8 that have played it actually picked Ascent. For everyone else, they either didn't pick it or it was the decider map for Team Liquid. And that meant, in all of those cases, so 7 out of 8, that meant that they got to pick the side that they played on. And of course, they all picked the defensive side. Now, what's quite interesting about this is we've seen, obviously, some dominant defensive sides from this comp so far, but Ascent's pick rate overall across all of the maps right now in the current map pool is actually the lowest of any map. It's actually below average in every single region. It's only been picked twice in EMEA whatsoever. It only got picked 5 times in China across 75 maps. And they've completed their whole group stage for stage 1. And it only got picked 5 times. And I think that honestly, this comp is probably one of the reasons why. Because if you are picking Ascent, you are basically granting your opponent the chance to play double Sentinel on defense side, and you know that you then have to attack into that. And I'm sure you all can figure out that this comp on defense side is going to be very, very strong, right? There's a ton of Sentinel utility that you're going to have to destroy. They're potentially playing Yoru and can fast rotate as well. There's just going to be a lot of things that you're going to have to deal with. But what you might find quite interesting is that this comp doesn't just sit back and wait for the opponent to come to them. It is actually pretty aggressive a lot of the time.
Take a pop shot towards Cat first. I feel like B main is where you'll find success with that off, but it's a set play from Cloud9.
And there's no room for the op to get any space. The flash on the other side of the cage, and they continue to push the matter.
So far of Leviathan, and more aggression outside of B. They're trying to bully Tex here on the extremity.
And they will succeed.
Now, one of the reasons this comp can afford to be so aggressive is because if we take a look at that example there from Cloud9, the second one, right, they're being aggressive here in B main, right? They're really running it down here. They've got the early Gravnet, they're going to Paranoia, they're going to flash, all of this kind of stuff. And normally, a team's reaction to that kind of thing is to go, okay, they're being aggressive over towards B, let's just sprint in towards A. But take a look at the map again. Do you really want to sprint into this? Do you really want to sprint into a Deadlock Vice setup with a Yoru TP who can gate crash across back over towards A? And this is where this comp gets really, really difficult to play against, right? Because when, Tex is getting pushed here and he dies and he sees like 3 people there, you would think the automatic reaction would be to run this way. But again, imagine if they did run that way. You just can't, right? But now you've lost all of this control as well. I mean, just think about this. What would you do if you're Lev here? What is the correct call? You're just stuck in an unbelievably bad position. But where this comp gets interesting is when you dive deeper into the numbers on the defensive side, because Lev were the only team who had to attack first. So if we take them out of it and take a look at everyone else who played the comp, who got a full 12 rounds on defense, there's some interesting things going on. Because the average defense round win out of 12 was 7.2 for those 7 teams who weren't Lev. And you might be like, oh, that's not that great, right? That's okay, but it's not amazing. But it does change when you take a look at the defensive rounds of those who won and those who lost, because when teams won with this comp, they averaged 10 defensive rounds, and when teams lost with this comp, they only averaged 4.5. And that is a pretty monumental difference here, right? And I think goes to show that maybe this comp, whilst it can be extremely strong, maybe it's not necessarily the easiest to play against. And one of the things that I noticed when going through the teams that lost with this comp and how they lost on the defense side was that they did struggle, it seemed, to make those aggro plays work, or their opponent were just very good at kind of dismantling any kind of aggressive plays that they went for.
能起得来的。
是因为掉枪比较多嘛。
A 小静音接触这一分是换了一个玩法。
我这个位置如果一听到东西要反
对，还是一个触
暗眼
发，
的，
球就看到就推黑，但是对面有假人
第一
和暗兽，
时间敢抓吗？
还是要
抓了。，
抓但是黑的效果已经结束了。末日审判在中路，但是末日审判对面近点。
What's interesting about this comp as well is that when you look at all the games that were played by this comp, there's really only one close game, and that was a 13-9 win for DRG over EDG. Every other game that this comp has played has either been a pretty dominant win or a pretty dominant loss, which is also quite interesting. But now also let's take a look at the attack side and some of the attack side numbers, because as you might expect, the attack sides for this comp, you know, might struggle somewhat, right? You don't maybe have as much as you normally would. Well, the attack sides overall have a 28% win rate, 15 out of 54 rounds overall played by these comps. Now, when you look at that, that's not great, right? That means averaging about a 3 and a bit, you know, attack rounds in a 12-round half. That's obviously not ideal, but actually it kind of gets worse because there was one mega outlier in all this as well, which was Apeks, who won 6 out of 6 of their attacking rounds against Team Heretics, and everyone else did not get anything close to this, right? Apeks were the really one outstanding team. So now let's take a look at how they attacked the map with this comp. Well, Apeks were playing the Yoru version of this comp, and I do think that was pretty important for them because it allowed them to do basically what they did almost every single round, which was run fakes, right? So you can see we've gone for a 1-3-1, you know, very standard Ascent stuff here, but take a look at what they're going to do. They're going to put this little gate crash here. They're now going to throw their deadlock wall in towards CT, and they're going to make this look like they're about to do a B split. Right, so they try and hide from the camera, the drone just there, and now they are going to throw a wall over here from Molzy. Fluorescent's going to make some noise and, you know, send a fake out here to make it seem like we're gonna come towards B. So over comes this wall, right? That's the wall that, hey, this is when they do a B split. The clone is gonna run into this trip just here or get spotted just there. You're getting pressure from B main, and now we TP back and we come towards A instead, and we come towards a weaker A site that we can now converge on. Or we can skip ahead a couple rounds as well, where we're going to see this from Apeks, where they're going to again throw this deadlock wall over the top. You see that we're towards A main. We're going to make this look like an A hit. We're going to send a smoke in towards heaven as well, but now we're actually going to run through mid to B instead. So again, we're just running these fakes over and over and over again if you're Apeks. And they even did this on the second round, right? When Team Heretics only had pistols, they ran 2 people into A, basically sacrificed them just so they could get the spike down on a weak site. Right, even when Heretics only had pistols. Because, of course, when you get the spike down in this comp, you then have all of the deadlock stuff, the refreshable gravnet, all the rest of it, you know, coming in here and making it incredibly difficult to then try and, you know, do anything against, right? Once you get into a retake scenario, you've pretty much lost against this comp, no matter what. As long as the deadlock is alive, you're in a lot of trouble. And so this is what Apeks continually did. Pretty much almost every attack round for them on this attack side was just fakes. And that's what's kind of interesting about this comp. It is a very extreme comp. It seems to go extremely well for teams or extremely badly for teams, depending on how well they are at playing the comp. And on attack side, you have to do some weird stuff as well. Now, interestingly enough, you might have an idea in your head that this comp is, you know, is going to become the meta. Well, in terms of win-losses, if you take the C9 versus Lev game out of it because they played each other with this kind of comp, right? And so someone had to win and someone had to lose. If you take that game out of it, it's actually won 2 games and lost 4. So it's 2 out of 6 for everyone else. So actually it hasn't gone that well overall, but some of the wins have been completely dominant and might convince you that, hey, we can do that, and so we can win dominantly as well. But we're still having to see, and maybe honestly Ascent just isn't getting picked for fear of this comp of getting absolutely destroyed.